Welcome to Teolumen Insights, where we reveal the hidden forces that shape the way you live and show you how to use them to create real transformation and supercharge your health, mindset, and daily life. Here are your hosts, Emma Greenwood and Nathan Sinclair.
Welcome to Teolumen Insights. I'm really excited about this deep dive today. We're going to be exploring the work of Dr. Phill Callahan.
Yeah, Dr. Phill Callahan.
An entomologist who had some pretty, how should we put it, unique ideas about the natural world.
Unique is one way to put it, but maybe a little unconventional, too.
Yeah, right.
Unconventional for sure.
He saw connections between things that, well, most scientists wouldn't even think to consider.
So what kind of connections are we talking about here? What was at the heart of Callahan's work?
His key idea was this concept of paramagnetism.
Paramagnetism. Okay, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's not exactly a household term, but it's all about these subtle magnetic fields.
Yeah.
But not the kind you'd find in, like, your fridge magnet.
Okay, so we're not talking about, like, the kind of magnetism that makes a compass point north.
Right. It's a much weaker form of magnetism. But Callahan believed that it was everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, like it was this hidden energy, this force that influences everything. I mean, from the way plants grow to even how our bodies function.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but I'm going to need a little more explanation here. What do these magnetic fields, these paramagnetic fields, actually do?
Well, Callahan believed they could amplify energy, like they could enhance vitality.
So he's saying there's this invisible energy field that can make things, I don't know, more alive, more vibrant.
Exactly. And he was particularly fascinated by the fact that certain rocks and minerals, certain materials, were strongly paramagnetic, like magnetite, for example.
Magnetite, okay. I've heard of that. It's a type of iron ore, right?
Right. It's a naturally occurring mineral, and it's very strongly paramagnetic. And Callahan believed that these materials, these paramagnetic materials, could act as amplifiers for this subtle energy.
Interesting. So he's saying these rocks can actually amplify this invisible energy field. And what did he think that could do? I mean, what kind of effects did he think it could have?
He saw a lot of potential in it, especially when it came to things like health and agriculture.
Okay. Let's start with health. I mean, how did he connect paramagnetism to human health?
Well, he had a personal experience that really shaped his thinking. He actually claimed that magnetite helped him cure his own lung cancer.
Wow. Hold on. He's saying he cured his cancer with a rock.
That's what he claimed. And he explained it by saying that magnetite could boost your body's energy, and it could also it could make things like vitamins and minerals work better.
Okay. That's a bold claim, and I imagine it's probably pretty controversial. But I am curious to hear more about how he got there. I mean, did he have any other evidence to support this idea, or was it just based on his personal experience?
Well, he didn't just rely on his own experience. He did a lot of experimentation with all sorts of things. Like he even tried things like magnetic beds and hyperbaric chambers with paramagnetic oxygen.
Okay. Hyperbaric chambers I kind of get. Those are those pressurized chambers, right, where they use pure oxygen to treat certain conditions. But what's paramagnetic oxygen? Is that different from regular oxygen?
Callahan believed it was. He thought it could enhance the therapeutic effects of the hyperbaric chamber.
I see. So he was really trying to find ways to apply this paramagnetic energy to improve health. But he didn't just focus on humans, did he? I mean, didn't he also apply these ideas to agriculture?
Yeah, he did. He believed that this paramagnetic energy was crucial for healthy soil and healthy plants.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a bit? I mean, what specifically did he think paramagnetism did for plants and soil?
Well, he took a very hands-on approach like he did with a lot of his research. He actually did experiments with potted plants.
Potted plants, like house plants.
Yeah, he'd add paramagnetic rock dust to some of them, and he found that the ones with the rock dust grew significantly better.
Oh, wow. So he was trying to show that this energy, this invisible paramagnetic energy, could actually affect living things.
Yeah.
That it could make plants grow better.
Exactly. He wasn't just looking at rocks and magnets in a lab.
Right.
He wanted to see how this energy worked in the real world, in nature.
So he was really trying to bridge that gap between the theoretical and the practical, between what was happening in the lab and what was happening out in the fields. But he didn't stop at just observing those effects, did he? Didn't he also talk about how modern farming practices might be interfering with this paramagnetic energy?
Oh, absolutely. He was very critical of of modern agriculture,
Yeah.
especially the heavy use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. He believed those practices were actually stripping the soil of its natural paramagnetism.
So he's saying that these chemicals are somehow depleting the soil of this beneficial energy.
Yeah, he saw it as a major reason why our food doesn't have the same nutritional value that it used to have.
So he's basically saying that we've gotten so focused on, increasing yields and controlling pests that we've lost sight of the energetic foundation of healthy food production.
Exactly. He was really concerned about that disconnect. He saw it as a kind of disrespect for the natural energies that make life thrive. Like we're trying to force things to grow without understanding the subtle forces at play.
That's a really interesting perspective. And it definitely makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, we tend to focus on what we can easily see and measure. But Callahan's work suggests that there might be these unseen forces, these subtle energies that play a much bigger role than we realize.
Right. He believed that we've kind of lost touch with that ancient wisdom, the kind of understanding of nature that our ancestors had.
And he thought paramagnetism was the key to rediscovering that wisdom.
Yeah. He saw it as a bridge between the old and the new, a way to combine modern science with the insights of ancient traditions.
And he saw evidence of this ancient wisdom in all sorts of places, didn't he? Like even in the way ancient structures were built.
He did. He was fascinated by ancient buildings and the materials they used. Like he was really intrigued by the round towers of Ireland.
Oh, yeah. Those are incredible structures, and they're incredibly old, too. What did he see in them that connected to paramagnetism?
Well, they used this special kind of mortar, a mortar that was mixed with ox blood.
Ox blood, really?
Yeah, and Callahan believed that ox blood was it was a paramagnetic material. And he thought they used it for a specific reason, to harness that energy, that paramagnetic energy, to give the towers strength and stability.
That's amazing. So he's suggesting that these ancient builders had an understanding of this subtle energy, and they were actually using it to enhance their structures.
Exactly. He believed that they were much more in tune with the natural world and the energies that shape it than we are today. And he saw those round towers as proof that this knowledge wasn't just a myth or a superstition, it was real.
Okay, so we've got paramagnetism potentially affecting soil health, maybe even playing a role in curing cancer, and possibly showing up in ancient building techniques. Where else did Callahan see this energy at work? I mean, did he think it was just limited to those areas, or did he see it as something even more pervasive?
Oh, he saw it everywhere.
Yeah.
Like he really believed it was a fundamental force in nature. He even thought that that ancient civilizations understood this energy better than we do.
And they incorporated that understanding into their healing practices.
Oh, absolutely. He was really fascinated by the ancient Jewish tradition of shatness, which involved using sackcloth and ashes for healing leprosy.
Sackcloth and ashes. I've heard that expression, but I never really knew what it meant.
Yeah. It was a ritualistic practice, and Callahan thought the ashes were key. He believed they were paramagnetic, and that's why they were effective.
Wow. So he's connecting this ancient healing ritual to this invisible energy field. That's pretty mind-blowing. But he didn't just focus on the past, did he? Didn't he also explore how paramagnetism might be relevant to modern technology?
He did. He was a very curious guy, always experimenting with new ideas. One of the things he looked into was the idea that everything vibrates at a certain frequency.
Okay. I've heard that before. Like the idea that everything has its own unique vibration.
Right. And Callahan believed those frequencies could affect our health, either positively or negatively. And he even claimed that he used a simple radio, a radio that was powered by a paramagnetic rock to detect enemy movements during World War II.
Hold on. A radio powered by a rock. How is that even possible?
I know. It sounds crazy, right? But that was Callahan. He had a way of seeing paramagnetism everywhere, even in the most unexpected places. And he really thought that if we could understand this energy better, it could revolutionize how we think about health and healing. But he wasn't just focused on paramagnetism.
What else was he interested in?
Well, he also talked about diamagnetism.
Diamagnetism. Okay. Now there's another new term for me. What's that all about?
So paramagnetic materials are attracted to magnetic fields, right?
Right.
But diamagnetic materials, they're the opposite. They're actually repelled by magnetic fields.
Interesting. So it's like a push-pull kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And Callahan believed that the interplay between paramagnetism and diamagnetism was really important. He thought it was key to understanding a lot of natural processes.
Okay, I'm following you so far. But can you give me an example of how this interplay between paramagnetism and diamagnetism works in nature? Like, how does it actually show up in the real world?
Well, he used dowsing as an example.
The Dows, you mean like those people who use rods or pendulums to find water?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Callahan believed that dowsers were actually sensing variations in the Earth's magnetic field. Like, he thought they were picking up on these subtle changes that were caused by things like underground water veins.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So he's saying that dowsers are, in a way, tapping into this interplay between paramagnetism and diamagnetism.
That was his idea, and he saw it as, just another example of how these subtle energies are constantly at work around us, like,
Yeah.
even if we don't realize it.
Right, right. We're surrounded by these forces, but most of us are completely oblivious to them. But Callahan wasn't content with just observing these things, was he? I mean, he wanted to be able to measure these energies to quantify them.
Yeah, he was very methodical in his approach. He wanted to bring some scientific rigor to his work.
And that's where the CGS unit comes in, right? I read that he used that to measure paramagnetism. What does CGS stand for anyway?
It stands for centimeter grams per second.
Okay. And what does that actually tell us about paramagnetism?
Well, it's a way to measure how strongly paramagnetic a material is, like how strongly it reacts to a magnetic field. And Callahan believed that materials with higher CGS readings had greater potential for things like, promoting healing and enhancing plant growth.
So theoretically, you could use this CGS unit to figure out which rocks or minerals would be the most effective for, say, amplifying that energy in your garden, or even for therapeutic purposes.
Exactly. He wanted to be able to measure these subtle energies so he could study them more precisely.
That makes sense. He was trying to bridge the gap between intuitive understanding and scientific measurement. But I know he wasn't afraid to explore some pretty controversial ideas, too. Like, didn't he also believe in orgon energy?
He did. Orgon energy is this concept that was developed by Wilhelm Reich.
Right. I remember reading about Reich. He was a psychoanalyst, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. But he also had some pretty unusual ideas about energy.
And Callahan thought this orgon energy was basically the same thing as paramagnetism.
That's right. He thought it was just another name for the same thing.
Wow. And didn't he also visit Roswell with Reich to investigate the supposed UFO crash site?
Yeah. They were both very interested in what might have happened there. Callahan believed that the government was trying to reverse engineer technology based on these energy principles.
Okay, so we've gone from ancient Irish towers to UFOs in like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Callahan's worldview was certainly wide-ranging. And speaking of wide-ranging, didn't he also have some pretty interesting ideas about Mobius strips?
Oh, yeah. He was fascinated by Mobius strips. Like, he thought they had these special properties related to paramagnetism.
Mobius strips, those are those twisted loops, right, where the inside and the outside are, like, connected?
Yeah, exactly. And Callahan was convinced that they could amplify or focus paramagnetic energy. He even tried attaching small Mobius strips made of copper wire to his plants.
He put them on his plants. What did he think that would do?
He thought it helped them grow better.
So he's basically saying that the shape of things can affect how this energy works.
Yeah, that was his idea.
Okay. That's pretty wild. But he was full of wild ideas, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't he also talk about something called Pima water?
Oh, yes, Pima water. He was really into that.
What is Pima water? I've never even heard of that.
It's a type of water that's been treated with iron oxide and then exposed to laser light.
Okay. And what's supposed to be so special about that?
Callahan believed it could purify water and restructure it. Like, he even thought it could potentially be used to desalinate seawater.
Wow. Desalinate seawater. That's a huge claim. And he attributed all that to the power of paramagnetism.
He did.
Okay. I'm seeing a pattern here. Paramagnetism seems to be the answer to everything for Callahan. But he didn't just rely on his intuition, did he? Didn't he try to measure these effects?
He did. He was always looking for ways to quantify these subtle energies. He was really into this system called the Bovis measurement. Have you ever heard of that?
The Bovis measurement. No, that's a new one. What's that all about?
It's supposed to measure the vitality or the life force of things.
The life force. That sounds a bit mystical.
It does, doesn't it? But Callahan thought he could use it to assess the health of plants, animals, even people. And he believed it was all tied back to the presence of paramagnetic energy.
So a high Bovis reading would mean that something is full of this good energy, and he thought he could use that to guide his work.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to get a sense of how his mind worked. But we haven't even talked about those peanut tubes yet, have we?
Oh, the peanut tubes. Yeah, those were pretty cool.
What were they? What did he use them for?
They're these tiny vacuum tubes that he used in his experiments with radio waves and paramagnetism.
Vacuum tubes, like the kind they used to use in old radios.
Right. And Callahan believed that they could be used to build really sensitive radios, like radios that could pick up on signals that normal radios miss.
And he thought that was because of their interaction with paramagnetic energy.
Yeah, he believed that paramagnetism could affect, our ability to communicate electronically.
Okay, so now we're talking about radio waves, but didn't he also talk about Faraday cages?
He did. Faraday cages are, they're a way to block electromagnetic fields. Like the kind that come from our phones and computers.
Right. They create a kind of shield, don't they?
Yeah. And Callahan saw the Faraday cage as a really powerful tool. He thought it could be used to understand and control electromagnetic energy. And he even experimented with building Faraday cages using paramagnetic materials.
Interesting. What did he think that would do?
He thought it could create a more comprehensive shield, against harmful radiation.
So he was concerned about the negative effects of electromagnetic fields.
Oh, yeah. He was really worried about that. He saw it as a form of pollution. Like he thought it was disrupting the natural energetic balance of our bodies and the environment.
And he believed that paramagnetism could help us mitigate those risks.
He did. He was always looking for ways to use this energy for good.
It's fascinating how he connected all these seemingly disparate ideas from ancient healing practices to modern technology. He saw paramagnetism at play everywhere. And he even delved into the microscopic world, didn't he? I read something about his work with microtubules.
Yes, microtubules are they're these tiny tube-like structures inside our cells.
Okay. And what did he think they had to do with paramagnetism?
He thought they might be involved in transporting paramagnetic materials throughout the body.
So they're like the pathways for this energy to travel within our cells.
That was his idea.
And he thought this might explain how something like magnetite could actually affect our cells at a deep level.
Right.
He also talked about red ochre a lot, didn't he? And not just as an ancient pigment. He seemed to think it had some kind of deeper significance.
He did. He was really fascinated by how prevalent it was in ancient cultures. They used it in cave paintings and burial rituals and all sorts of things.
And what did he think they were doing with it?
Callahan believed they were tapping into its paramagnetic properties, like maybe to enhance spiritual experiences or connect with some kind of subtle energies.
So he's saying that this pigment might have had a much deeper meaning to these ancient cultures than we typically think.
That's right.
Okay, so we've got red ochre, microtubules, Faraday cages, dowsing. Callahan was all over the map. But didn't he also explore something called the piezoelectric effect?
Oh, yes. The piezo effect. That's the ability of certain materials to generate electricity when you apply pressure to them.
Right. I remember that from physics class.
Oh.
But how did Callahan connect that to paramagnetism?
Well, he thought that the pressure that's applied to a paramagnetic material, it might actually enhance its energy output, like make it stronger. And he even experimented with combining piezo crystals with paramagnetic materials.
What was he hoping to achieve with that?
He thought it could amplify their effects, especially in areas like plant growth and water purification.
So always looking for ways to harness this energy, to put it to practical use.
That's right.
And speaking of practical uses, didn't he have some interesting ideas about a type of fuel called terp?
Oh yeah, terp. That was made from peat bogs.
Peat bogs. Aren't those wetlands where they get peat moss?
Yeah. And Callahan believed that burning terp would release beneficial paramagnetic materials into the atmosphere. Like he thought it could actually enrich the surrounding land and promote plant growth.
So he's saying that burning this fuel could actually improve the soil.
Yeah.
That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
But I guess that was Callahan in a nutshell. He was always challenging conventional thinking, always looking for for those hidden connections.
He was definitely a unique thinker.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground already, and it
Yeah.
seems like we're just scratching the surface of Dr. Phill Callahan's fascinating world.
Yeah, there's a lot more to explore.
But I think this is a good place to pause for now and let our listeners absorb everything we've talked about. This is a lot to take in.
It definitely is.
Callahan's work is it's dense and challenging, but it's also incredibly thought-provoking. He asks us to consider the possibility that there's more to the world than we can see and measure with our with our conventional scientific instruments.
He really makes you question your assumptions, doesn't he?
He does, and I think that's a good thing. Sometimes we need to be challenged to look beyond what we think we know.
Absolutely.
He was a true pioneer, blending science, history, and personal observation to explore the hidden forces that shape our world.
And he reminds us that sometimes the most profound discoveries come from the most unexpected places. He was really big on that idea that we need to pay attention to what nature's telling us,
Mm-hmm.
He thought we could unlock a lot of forgotten knowledge.
Like we lost that intuitive understanding that our ancestors had.
Totally. And he thought paramagnetism was a big part of that, rediscovering that lost wisdom.
Okay.
And one area where he applied this was in trying to understand the potential dangers of what he called rogue electricity.
Rogue electricity.
Mm.
Now that sounds a little ominous. What did he mean by that?
He was talking about those stray electromagnetic fields that are, kind of all around us now,
Right.
generated by things like power lines and, all the electrical equipment we use.
Right.
And he thought these rogue frequencies, they could really mess with our body's natural electromagnetic balance,
It's like an electrical hum that we can't see, but that might be affecting us negatively.
Yeah, exactly. Like a constant kind of low-level disruption.
Did you think paramagnetism could help with that?
Absolutely. He believed that being around paramagnetic materials could help shield us from those harmful frequencies.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So he was connecting this invisible world of energy to real-world concerns like, electromagnetic pollution.
Right. He was always trying to bridge that gap between the seen and the unseen.
He also explored some other really intriguing concepts like structured water. Didn't he think paramagnetism could play a role in how water molecules arrange themselves?
Oh, yeah. He was really fascinated by that. He was very interested in the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
He was the one who claimed to have photographed the crystalline structures of water. Remember that?
Yeah, I think I've seen some of those photos.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And Emoto believed that water could be influenced by, things like thoughts and intentions.
Okay.
And Callahan saw a connection between that and paramagnetism. He suggested that the subtle energy of paramagnetic materials, it might influence the way those water molecules organize themselves.
So he was basically saying that water isn't just this passive substance. It can be imprinted with information and energy.
Exactly. And he thought that if we could really grasp those subtle influences on water, we could dramatically improve its quality and even maybe its healing properties.
Definitely makes you think about water differently. And Callahan's curiosity didn't stop there. He also delved into the world of sound,
Oh, yeah, sound frequencies.
Mm-hmm. He thought certain frequencies could actually benefit plants and even help to ward off pests.
He was really into that. He did all sorts of experiments with sound, playing specific tones, and even natural sounds to his plants.
Oh, he was serenading his plants.
I guess you could say that. He was
Mhm.
really open to exploring all sorts of unconventional ideas,
I remember reading that he also drew inspiration from the work of Royal Rife.
Oh, yeah, Royal Rife.
He was the inventor who claimed to have developed a device that could cure cancer using specific frequencies.
Yeah, Rife's work has been pretty much debunked by the scientific community, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But it sounded like Callahan was intrigued by the idea that certain frequencies could have a real impact on the body, whether for good or bad.
Yeah, he thought Rife might have been onto something, even if his methods weren't exactly scientifically sound.
It seems like Callahan was always pushing the boundaries, willing to look beyond those accepted norms and explore those fringe areas of science.
Definitely. And that's what makes his work so interesting.
He even had some interesting ideas about lignite.
Lignite.
Yeah, it's a type of coal. What was it about lignite that caught his attention?
Well, he thought that lignite was rich in paramagnetic materials and that it could be really valuable as a soil amendment, adding it to the soil to improve its quality.
Okay.
He even suggested that burning lignite, while obviously potentially polluting, could actually release some beneficial paramagnetic particles into the atmosphere.
Interesting. So he saw a potential upside even in something that we generally think of as harmful to the environment.
Exactly. He was always looking for those hidden connections, you know?
The unexpected benefits.
Yeah, those things that most people might overlook.
Callahan was also very drawn to the work of Dr. Robert O. Becker.
Oh, yes, Robert Becker. He was a pioneer in bioelectromagnetism, wasn't he?
He was. What connection did Callahan see there?
Well, Becker's work really focused on those electrical properties of living organisms.
Right.
And Callahan believed that Becker's research, really validated his own ideas about how crucial electromagnetic balance is in the body. Like, he thought Becker's work on bone healing, for example, showed how we could use electricity and magnetism to help the body heal.
Okay, so Callahan was bringing in insights from a whole range of fields, biology, physics, even ancient spiritual practices. It's pretty impressive.
He was definitely a synthesizer.
And speaking of subtle energies, he also talked about biophotons, didn't he?
Biophotons, yes. Those are those weak light signals that living organisms emit.
Right. What do you make of those?
We saw a potential link between biophotons and paramagnetism. He thought the energy of paramagnetic materials might influence how these light signals are sent and received,
So he's saying there's this whole invisible world of light and energy communication happening within and around us all the time.
Yeah, that was his thinking. He even suggested that this could explain things like chi or prana in traditional Eastern medicine.
Wow. It's amazing how he drew those connections between modern science and these ancient traditions. But he also talked about the potential dangers of these unseen energies. Right. I'm remembering something about geopathic stress.
Geopathic stress, yes, that was another area he was concerned about.
What did he say about that?
He believed that some geological formations could emit harmful energies that could disrupt our health.
Like what kind of formations?
He thought it was connected to disruptions in the Earth's magnetic field, potentially caused by things like underground water veins or fault lines.
So he's saying that the very ground we stand on could be affecting us in ways we don't even realize.
Exactly. And he even used dowsing techniques to try and map out these areas of geopathic stress.
Fascinating. It seems like everywhere he looked, he saw these hidden influences at play.
He did, and he was always trying to understand how they worked and how they affected us.
Didn't he also delve into radionics? That's another one that's often dismissed as pseudoscience, isn't it?
It is. Radionics is all about using subtle energies for diagnosis and healing.
Right. And I'm guessing Callahan thought it had some validity.
He did. He thought radionics might be tapping into those same paramagnetic forces that he was studying.
Interesting. So
Right.
he was open to the possibility that there were different ways of understanding and working with these energies?
Absolutely. He was never afraid to explore unconventional approaches.
He was also drawn to the work of Victor Schauberger, wasn't he? The Austrian naturalist who studied water.
Yes, Victor Schauberger Callahan was fascinated by Schauberger's ideas about the importance of vortexes and how water naturally flows,
Right.
He thought Schauberger's work offered real insights into how paramagnetic materials could influence the properties of water, like making it more vital and potentially more healing.
Okay. So he saw a connection between the energy of the water and the energy of paramagnetism.
Yes. And he also linked paramagnetism to something else that's pretty fundamental to human biology, melanin.
Melanin. That's the pigment that gives our skin its color, right?
Exactly. And Callahan, being Callahan, believed that melanin being paramagnetic played a big role in protecting us from harmful electromagnetic radiation.
Like from the sun.
Yes, like the sun. He saw it as another example of how our bodies have evolved to work with these natural energies, for our own benefit.
That's a really interesting connection.
Yeah.
It seems like he saw this constant interplay between our physical bodies and the electromagnetic environment.
He did. He believed they were intimately connected.
And it wasn't just about physical health either. He also talked about how paramagnetism could enhance spiritual experiences.
That's right. He believed that certain materials, especially the ones found in those sacred sites around the world, he thought they could amplify the energies that help us connect spiritually.
And he even experimented with creating devices to enhance meditation and spiritual exploration.
Right. He did. He was always looking for practical applications for his ideas.
So he was trying to bridge that gap between science and spirituality using paramagnetism as the link.
I think that's a great way to put it. He saw it as this force that weaves through all aspects of our being, the physical, the mental, the spiritual.
And he wasn't afraid to explore those connections, even if they challenged the conventional wisdom.
Never. He was a true pioneer in that sense, always pushing the boundaries.
He also talked about the Schumann resonance, didn't he? That's the natural electromagnetic frequency of the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, the Schumann resonance.
What connection did he see there?
Callahan believed it was essential for life on Earth and that it was somehow tied to the planet's paramagnetic properties.
Okay.
He even suggested that disruptions to the Schumann resonance, whether caused by us or by natural events, he thought those disruptions could negatively affect our health and well-being.
So he's basically saying that our planet has its own energy field and that we're all connected to it in ways we don't fully understand.
Yeah, that was a big part of his thinking.
And he didn't stop there, did he? He even thought paramagnetism could influence the weather.
Oh yeah, he had some ideas about that. He thought that if you strategically place certain paramagnetic materials, they could actually attract moisture and affect how clouds form.
Wow, trying to control the weather with paramagnetism? That's thinking big.
Callahan was never one to shy away from a bold idea.
It seems like he was always looking for those hidden levers in nature. The ones that most people wouldn't even think to look for.
He was definitely a master of seeing connections that others missed.
And he wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air. He was also looking at the work of other researchers like Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, who studied biophotons.
Oh yes, Fritz Popp.
How did Callahan connect Popp's work to his own research?
Well, Popp's research really focused on the idea that living organisms emit light, those biophotons.
Right.
And Callahan saw that as confirmation of his own thinking about the role of light and frequency in all those biological processes.
Yeah.
He thought it supported his belief that we're constantly sending and receiving these subtle energy signals and that paramagnetism is somehow involved in all of that.
It sounds like he was building a whole new model for understanding life in the natural world based on all these invisible energies.
Yeah, he was definitely trying to expand our understanding of what's possible.
And he even saw a connection to homeopathy, didn't he?
He did. Homeopathy is another one of those areas that's often considered to be on the fringes of science.
Yeah, it uses those highly diluted substances to stimulate the body's healing response.
Right, and Callahan thought the subtle energies of paramagnetic materials could amplify the effects of those homeopathic remedies.
Interesting. So he was basically saying that these tiny doses could be made even more potent with the help of paramagnetism.
That's right.
Wow. It's pretty remarkable how he saw the potential of paramagnetism to enhance so many different aspects of life, from our health and how we grow our food to even our understanding of consciousness.
He had this amazing ability to connect the dots.
And he didn't stop there. He even thought it could help us create a more sustainable energy source.
He envisioned a future where we would be using paramagnetic generators instead of fossil fuels,
Wow. So clean, renewable energy powered by paramagnetism.
Exactly. It was a bold vision, but it really reflected his deep concern for the planet and his belief that nature holds the key to solving so many of our problems.
It sounds like he was ahead of his time in many ways.
He was advocating for a more holistic and sustainable way of life long before it became a mainstream idea.
It's inspiring to think about how he was able to connect science and nature and human ingenuity to create this vision of a better world.
He was a true visionary, and his work continues to inspire people to think differently about the world and our place in it.
Well, we've covered an incredible amount of ground in our exploration of Callahan's work. From the microscopic world of microtubules to the vast energy of the Schumann resonance, he saw paramagnetism at play everywhere, influencing everything from our health to how we grow our food to even how we build our homes.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. And while some of his ideas might seem pretty out there, you can't deny that he was a passionate advocate for a more holistic and sustainable way of living.
He definitely challenged us to think outside the box and to appreciate those connections that often go unnoticed.
Absolutely. So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit more about Callahan's practical work. Did he ever try to put these ideas into action? Develop any specific techniques or devices?
Oh, he did. He wasn't just a theorist. He was a real tinkerer and experimenter.
I'd love to hear more about that. What kind of things did he create?
Well, one example is his work with what he called paramagnetic traps for insects.
Paramagnetic insect traps. How did those work?
He believed that insects are attracted to certain frequencies of light.
Okay.
And he thought he could use paramagnetic materials to manipulate those frequencies,
So he was exploring ways to control insect populations without resorting to those harmful pesticides.
Exactly. He was always looking for solutions that worked with nature, not against it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And what about this biodynamic field broadcaster I read about?
Oh yeah, that was another one of his inventions. It was basically a copper antenna that he wound into a specific shape, and he believed it could broadcast beneficial energies into the environment.
So kind of like a high-tech dowsing rod.
You could think of it that way. It was like he was using technology to amplify those subtle energies he was so fascinated by.
Did he have any evidence that it actually worked?
Well, there are anecdotal reports of increased plant growth and improved soil health in areas where the broadcaster was used.
Interesting. So he was trying to bring a more scientific approach to those ancient ideas about energy in the land.
Yeah, he was always looking for those connections between the old and the new.
And didn't he also have a keen interest in those ancient building techniques? Like how they might have used paramagnetic materials for specific purposes?
He did. He was really fascinated by ancient structures like the pyramids and those round towers in Ireland.
The round towers again.
Yeah, he was convinced that they were built with a deep understanding of paramagnetism and that they used those materials to make the buildings stronger and more energetically balanced.
So he was looking to the past for inspiration, trying to learn from those ancient builders.
Exactly. He thought there was a lot we could rediscover from their wisdom.
It's really remarkable how he was able to weave together all these different threads, ancient wisdom, modern science, his own observations of nature.
He had a truly holistic vision.
And it wasn't just about buildings either. He also explored the potential of paramagnetic materials in water purification.
Oh, right. He thought they could help water cleanse itself,
Interesting. So like a natural water filter.
Yeah, he experimented with adding paramagnetic rock dust to water, thinking it could remove impurities.
So again, working with nature to find more sustainable solutions.
That was always his goal.
And didn't he even try to apply these ideas to food preservation?
He did. He thought paramagnetic materials could help preserve food and keep it fresh longer.
So less waste and better nutrition.
Exactly.
Wow. Callahan really seemed to see the potential for paramagnetism everywhere.
He did, and he wasn't afraid to put those ideas to the test.
It's inspiring to see how he connected all those dots, to create a vision of a more harmonious and sustainable world.
He was definitely a visionary thinker, and his work continues to inspire us to look deeper and explore those possibilities that are often hidden in plain sight.
It's amazing how he could go from insect traps to the pyramids.
Yeah.
His mind was always making these connections.
He was a master synthesizer for sure, bringing all these different pieces together.
It makes you wonder, though, if his ideas about paramagnetism are so groundbreaking, why haven't they been more widely accepted? By the scientific community.
Well, Callahan's work was definitely outside the mainstream. He wasn't afraid to challenge those established theories.
And to explore ideas that a lot of scientists would consider to be pretty fringe.
Exactly. Like his belief that he cured his own cancer with magnetite.
Right.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is. And while it might be convincing to some, it doesn't really meet the standards of scientific proof, does it?
Not really. And a lot of his work is based on anecdotal evidence, personal observations rather than those controlled experiments that scientists typically rely on.
So it's more about connecting the dots and seeing those bigger patterns than about proving things in a lab setting.
Yeah, he was more of a big picture thinker.
And I can see how that kind of approach could be frustrating to scientists who are looking for that hard data.
Definitely. But that doesn't mean his work has no value.
Right.
He was a real pioneer in exploring these subtle energies.
Mm-hmm.
And his insights, they continue to inspire a lot of researchers who are looking beyond those limitations of conventional science,
He was definitely a unique voice urging us to see the world differently.
To consider all those possibilities that are often overlooked.
To pay attention to those unseen forces that might be at play.
Exactly.
So even if not all of his ideas hold up under scientific scrutiny, he's still encouraging us to expand our awareness.
To be open to different perspectives.
And to approach the natural world with a sense of wonder and humility.
I think that's a really important point. He was always emphasizing the need to observe nature carefully, to really pay attention to what it's telling us.
That's a great message for our listeners. I think Dr. Phill Callahan's legacy isn't about being right or wrong.
It's about encouraging us to think for ourselves.
To stay curious.
And to keep exploring.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of Dr. Phill Callahan, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from his work?
I think the biggest takeaway is his emphasis on the interconnectedness of everything you know. He really saw the world as this web of energy where everything is constantly influencing everything else.
And he believed that if we could understand that interconnectedness, it would change everything.
It would change how we relate to the world.
How we treat each other.
How we care for the planet.
Absolutely. He was a true advocate for a more holistic and sustainable way of living, and his work is more relevant now than ever.
I think so too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into the mind of Dr. Phill Callahan. It's been a real pleasure exploring his work with you.
It's been my pleasure too.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those minds open and keep diving deep. This has been Teolumen Insights.